as soon as it is possible. Very limited space is also being provided for the public here at the DAO, utilizing proper medical screening questions and social distancing. Online, public input is also encouraged and welcome. A link for this is located on our district website. For tonight's meeting, we had 3 inquiries. They were all assigned to the Executive Director of Operations. Our mission statement. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today and tomorrow's society. 6:31 is the time. Today's date is September 16th, 2020. We are here at the DAO. Some of the execs are probably remote. Shannon, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you, Shannon. And now would you mind calling roll, please? Here.
Here.
Here. I am here.
And let's read.
No, not at all.
He is not in attendance at this time. Also in attendance, Superintendent Will and Judd. I'm presuming.
Yeah.
Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, Dr. Marsha Weiss. Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Dr. Lori Putnam. Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, Lori Posch. Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education, Carol Potter. Executive Director of Research, Evaluation, Assessment, and Enrollment, Dr. Sylvia Huff. Executive Director of Community Education, Adam Holmes. Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Amy Scalabry. Executive Director of Operations, Gary Ganji. Executive Director of Human Resources, Tracy Blindahl. Director of Community Education for Engagement and Communications, Tammy Deland. Ellen Stewart, I apologize, what is your title?
Director of Equity Services.
Thank you. And Executive Assistant Mary Kusterman. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. Is our consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board routinely adopts without debate. Any single member of the board may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. The full text of items can be found at the end of the agenda. On tonight, we have item A, approval of agenda. Item B, approval of minutes from the meetings we had on August 19th and September 20th, or September 2nd. Item C, approval of payment of bills and other financial transactions in the amount of $3,551,696.86. Item D, approval of personnel staff changes. Item E, acceptance of grant awards and donations. Item F, proposed revised board policies 203.2, 213, and proposed repeal of the board governance policy. Item G, revised board policy 903, third reading. Item H, proposed revised board policy 533, third reading. Item I, proposed revised board policy 506, third reading. Item J, proposed revised board policy 499, third reading. Item K, proposed revised board policy 713 on for third reading. Item L, call for bids, DAO HVAC and roofing project. Item M, parking lot improvements, Oak Hill change order totaling $8,348.56. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to accept tonight's agenda as recorded.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Shannon, could you take roll, please?
Zach Dorholt,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmouth is a yes. Shannon Hodge is a yes. Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Jeff Polreese,
Yes.
and Les Green is not present.
Thank you, Shannon. Up next are our informational items. Item 2A is school updates. This is going to be presented by Dr. Marcia Beisch, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, and Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education.
Good evening. Lori's going to present, so I'll wait for it to come up. Here it comes. Awesome. Thanks, Lori. So good evening, Chair Polreese, Superintendent Jett, members of the board, and those joining us via live streaming this evening. Dr. Putnam and I are very excited to share the 2020 start of school for District 742 this year. As you know, last week was dedicated to conferencing with families, listening to their hopes and dreams for their child's school year, getting devices deployed, and students and families connected to their learning platforms. The DLA staff spent time with families in virtual open houses, connecting with families to ensure students had what they needed to start virtual learning this week. As you can see from the smiling faces under the masks in this photo, it has been an amazing week as staff welcome students back to school. Arrival, as you know, now includes temperature screening of students as they arrive by foot, vehicle, or bus, and principals have identified various entrances throughout the building to limit the flow of traffic, to limit and control the flow of traffic. Arrival is going very well, and sites have significantly reduced the amount of time it is taking to screen students and welcome them into class. Principals are reporting that class is starting on time, despite these new procedures. After months of planning, health and safety protocols were actualized this week. Students and staff alike are getting used to wearing masks in school. Signage is visible throughout the building, and it's been fun to actually observe students use these visual cues to guide their movement and behavior throughout the building. At Talahi this week, Principal Hansen and I chuckled when one of the students used the big 6-foot social distancing circles as a hopping pad. In addition, classroom environments have been creatively configured in such a way as to practice safe social distancing, and nurses' offices and care rooms are ready to support students' health needs. In the previous photo, we have our very own our Superintendent Jett assisting a student to the nurse's office at Oak Hill. Staff now have had a chance to meet all of their students. Routines and procedures for health and safety and learning are being taught, modeled, and practiced. Morning meeting takes place daily for all elementary students, either in person or virtually. At the elementary level, music and art is taking place in the classroom. In this photo, I had the chance to observe third grade students playing the drums. This teacher will leave the instruments in the classroom while these particular units are being taught, and then rotate the instruments to the next class. Breakfast and lunch served in the classroom has gone quite smoothly this week. Meals are delivered to the classroom on carts, and then trays are deposited in the hallways for nutritional staff to retrieve when lunch or breakfast is finished. Here you can actually see the new trays that we have been talking with you about for weeks. They have compartments and lids and make it very easy for students to manage this new procedure of eating in the classroom. Recess is teacher-led and scattered throughout the day to allow for safe social distancing on the playground. Recess usually happens around lunch and could happen at another time throughout the day, but is strategically scheduled and zoned on playgrounds to allow for safe play. As you can see in this picture of the new playground at Lincoln, these 3 through 5 students are very appreciative of this new play equipment geared for their size. Dismissal at the elementary level is also going very well. Here you see students getting picked up by their parents. As a result of the pandemic, we have more parents transporting their own children to and from school this year. When I was at Oak Hill the other day during dismissal, I had the chance to observe teachers saying goodbye to students in other ways, such as with a virtual hug, a foot tap, or an elbow bump.
Good evening. It has been a real treat to get to finally see our students again, to see our staff, and we are so glad to finally be seeing all the hard work that we've done for months put into practice. It's been really fun to actually watch this as not only the assistant superintendent, but also a mom, to see my own kids going through this, and we've certainly not going to be Pollyanna. We've had a couple bumps along the way, but that is, I think, only to be expected. And what I can say is that our students, our staff, our families have been just incredible with the way they've rolled with it. They've had such a can-do attitude. And I just want to thank all of the staff, the teachers, parents, students, and our community for following health and safety protocols to make it possible for our kids to be back in school, because it has been so joyful and so incredible just to see our kids back. Our arrival has been going smoothly. As Marcia said, we've spread out. Gary, you can switch to the next slide. We've spread out our arrivals depending on whether they're driving themselves or taking buses or walking. I was at South the first day and helping check kids in if they weren't sure where their advisory was. And it was almost 9 o'clock and I kept thinking, where are the students? And it was just such a smooth operation with our support staff out doing temperatures and all of the staff out in the hallways, that the students came and went to class so just efficiently and effectively. I was floored. It was just really incredible to see how quickly all of our team has adapted. As Marcia referenced, here you can see an elbow bump that is happening. Regardless of health and safety protocols, and they're following them. Our team, our students, our staff have found ways to connect, and it's been really incredible to watch that happen. And I have to say, beyond my wildest expectations, our students and our staff have followed those health and safety protocols. I had to look closely after our principal Nutter sent me this beautiful photo. Our students are finding ways to express themselves and their individuality, even wearing masks. And our students have really quickly adapted to the new ways of being in school, whether it's following hallway traffic patterns. And some of those are fun. If you happen to be right next door, you get a nice long walk around the school, and it's been fun to watch our students and our staff figuring that out and really partnering together to understand the new routines that we need to have to keep us all safe and in school. This picture was really fun. It was a photo of South, their first period of the day on Monday. You can see the students with one of our teachers, and then up on the screen, if you can see, there are some students joining from home. And while there's certainly been some new learning for all of us around Google Meets and joining virtually, it has really been smooth, and it's been fun. This particular class, the students were talking together, the teacher was talking to the students at home and in person, and it was just a really neat learning environment. As you know, our teachers are meeting with all of our students the first 10 minutes of class, whether they're in person or virtually, and then the teacher decides what happens next to meet their instructional goals for the day. So some students, I know my daughter stayed on for an hour for one class and was partnering and watching a lab happening, and in other classes, they got their directions, they got their information from Schoology, and then they continue to work on their own. So it's been neat to watch the changes happening there. And all of our classes, we have found ways to make work. Here is one of our CTE classes happening at Tech. Thanks to the hard work of our learning and teaching department, our BCRs and our staff, we have found creative ways to ensure that classes like tech ed, science, music, art, those are all still happening. And it's only been through the perseverance and dedication of all of those teams working together to be sure that these classes were able to happen and happen safely. The other neat thing has been our block schedules at middle level that we implemented to reduce transition time and to keep students and staff safe. Has been neat to watch. I've talked to several teachers who have said that veteran teachers who have said that they feel like new teachers all over again, and they're trying new ways of learning and teaching. And while it's challenging and it's presenting some new ways of doing things, they've all had really positive approaches and a really, as I said at the beginning, a can-do attitude about how we're going to make this work for our students and potentially even uncover some even better ways of doing things. Our lunchrooms have been just honestly a little eerie. I'm not going to lie. They've been so quiet. For those of you who have been in a middle school and high school cafeteria and to really have it be so quiet and silent and students, conversing with their neighbor or let's be honest, on their phone, it's been really interesting to watch. But our students have found ways to get their lunches safely and to still social distance and find some opportunity for engagement. So I'm really grateful for the work of our administrators and our students who have made this happen despite all the obstacles that could potentially be in their way. And thanks to Gary and his nutrition team, we've got a great model for grab and go food at the end of the day. It's just been a really smooth situation for lunch and breakfast. And here you can see our dynamic duo of Principal Johnson and AP Chacolas at McKinley. They've followed the same kinds of health and safety protocols. They did not go to the block schedule, but have their 6-period day because they have some fewer students. And they've decided to keep their own students for distance learning, which has been really neat to see how they've wrapped the teachers and their counselors and their administration have really wrapped their arms around their students and are making distance learning work through concurrent enrollment and virtual drop-ins. And speaking of distance learning, this is a photo of one of our distance learning teachers and her children who are also in the Distance Learning Academy. It's really pretty unbelievable. I think we've topped out around 1,800 students at this point, K-12. Just phenomenal. And I want to say thank you for the patience that all of our families and students and staff have extended as we have reworked our master schedules, our class lists, and we are continuing to finalize those this week. And it's been really fun to watch that school grow its own identity and its own community. And finally, our activities are up and running. The musical tryouts were this week at Tech. Sports, there's tennis here, soccer is running. Track or cross country, we see our students out, and swimming has been happening. Our ADs are in constant communication with the Minnesota State High School League because there's just so many new happenings and new information coming out to make sure that we're keeping our students safe. Junior high activities are in their 3rd day and going very well. So that's been really fun to watch our students get some very intensive skill building opportunities. And finally, you can see some of our staff and community partners are welcoming our students back. It's been a really great first few days, and we only expect it to continue to get better as we go. Marcia and I welcome questions, and thank you so much.
Natalie, any questions? Zach? Shannon?
No.
Monica?
Yes, I have a question. So, Lori, I was asking last meeting, that if you will anticipate that, actually Lori Porsche, if you will anticipate that the schools, that the kids will have more personalized learning because the classroom were smaller. But I didn't anticipate when I asked that question that the teacher that is teaching the class in person is also teaching the class online. So it's not that the class is smaller. So can you speak a little bit more about that? What have you seen and what happens in terms of personalized learning?
I can, and Marcia and Lori can add to this as well. And it's not all of our teachers that are teaching concurrently, that have students at the same time. So we do have a really large staff at our Distance Learning Academy as well. I don't know that I have the exact number of how many staff we have, but we do have elementary teachers who have only Distance Learning Academy students. So they're teaching only through that online platform. And then we have the majority of our courses at secondary who also have teachers assigned to them. It is some of those secondary classes. As we mentioned, we wanted to make sure that we could offer as many courses as possible for our students, even if they selected Distance Learning Academy. So it's some of those courses that we have had to have be taught concurrently. We actually have some of our teachers at our brick and mortar schools who asked to have the students with them concurrently. So the majority of our classes at Distance Learning Academy are taught by Distance Learning Academy teachers this year. Marcia and Lori, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Does that answer your question, Monica? I can add on from secondary if you need, but otherwise I'm happy to not.
So just a clarification between the Distance Learning Academy, which are kids that have chosen to be in distance learning, and the kids that are in the same classroom that the others, but they are in different schedules. So can you clarify about that? Which ones are you speaking of?
Yep, so I was speaking about our Distance Learning Academy students, and I think you're talking about our students who are either an A-day student or a B-day student. Is that it? So as Lori mentioned, at the beginning of each class, they log in for at least 10 minutes so that they can see all of the students every single day. Our teachers can, and our students can connect with their teachers and also their other classmates who are there on that opposite day. So as Lori shared with you in the example from her daughter, sometimes that's just a quick check-in in the morning with the entire class before they're off and working in the assignments that the teacher has set up in Schoology. And other times they may stay synchronous with the class for longer. So overall, our secondary teachers have the same class size that they would have, but it's split in half. So they see half in person on A day and the other half in person on B day. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions, Monica? Al, do you have any questions tonight? All right. The only question I have is a comment. I'm just really excited to see all the kids back. Thanks for a great presentation, and thanks to all the teachers and staff for rising to the occasion. Willie, did you want to add anything?
Chair Polreese, the only thing that I would add is there was this one slide where there was a young person that was being assisted, or it was said that this young person was being assisted by the superintendent, but it was the opposite. So the superintendent was the one who was mortified on the very first day of school, and it was the kindergartner who was helping the superintendent acclimate to school, and he's the one that took me to the nurse's office.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, thank you, ladies. Great presentation. With that, we will move on to item number 3. It's an action item. Item A is approval of the preliminary levy certification. This is going to be done by Amy Scullerud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Good evening, Chair Polreese, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. Gary will be bringing up the presentation shortly. So this is our annual preliminary certification of the levy. The final certification, which we'll announce the exact date of later, will come to the board in December. And so in the board agenda, you'll see that the action item is to approve the maximum. And so what we're presenting tonight is our current best estimate of what that maximum levy will be. We don't anticipate it differing significantly from now through December, but just a slight disclaimer that the State Department of Ed did update and do some systems updates over the summer. And the Levy is one of those systems that went under a major programming overhaul. And it is not functioning as smoothly as it usually does. And the Levy reports from the state right now are scattered with significant errors in a number of places that the state knows are out there that they're working on addressing. And so a lot of the numbers that have gone into the preliminary levy tonight are manually calculated based on what the system hopefully should be doing. But these are some complex calculations, and sometimes there's things that feed in or that they input on their end that are out of our control. And so I just want that awareness to be out there that in a typical year, we don't see a lot of change from now to December in this specific line items. That may not be the case this year, but when we get to the end and we talk about where we're anticipating that kind of net levy percent increase or decrease overall to be, that's not going to be a huge factor. We still anticipate it to not swing too much, but the individual numbers between the categories might shift. So what we have first on the first slide is general fund levy. And so the largest portion of our levy comes in the general fund. And the general fund does include the long-term facilities maintenance and capital related items too. We're not going to go through every item line by line. I'm really just going to point out a couple things where there's larger shifts. So if you look at line 10, that is our long-term facilities maintenance levy, and you'll see there's a pretty significant increase there of about $700,000. That was an intentional increase. Part of that had been pre-planned to offset some debt service decreases that we anticipated coming. And then the remainder of that was what the board had recommended approval to be able to increase and provide some additional funding when that was approved in June. And so if you recall at that time, we had said there's a high likelihood, that we may have enrollment related negative adjustments that will offset that. And if you look at the total bottom line difference in our levy, that's exactly what happens. And so while we increase that and we're able to have more funds to work with for the long-term facilities maintenance for upkeep on our buildings, it's really not going to result in that tax increase because there's other negative adjustments that offset that. And those negative adjustments have to do with whether it's from a previous year or our current year projecting forward adjustments to reflect updated enrollment and some decreases in the enrollment numbers. So bottom line for general fund, really quite flat, about a $43,000 increase. If we move to the next slide, which is community education. Community education levies are, for the most part, population-based, and so there tend to not be significant shifts from year to year. That levy is pretty flat and constant, and so this levy is one that we don't anticipate changing much. The errors on MDE's system aren't, for the most part, in anything that will impact community education. So this should be a pretty firm number that won't shift much between now and December. And that's a slight decrease in that levy of about $4,700. And then the third component of the levy is debt service. So the debt service component is to cover the principal and interest on any bond issuances that are out there that could be voter approved bonds, or it can be long-term facilities debt that's issued under that program. And so we have a combination of both, but the total debt service levy, again, we're seeing about a $212,000 decrease, and that's about what we were projecting and had intentionally increased the long-term facilities maintenance levy to offset that. So total, when we look at the levy comparison right now, the best calculations that we can get from MDE's initial runs are that we would have a decrease of about $174,000, which is just over a 0.5% decrease. Like I said, we're not 100% sure the accuracy of that at this point. However, we're anticipating that at most we would be looking at a 0 net change in terms of the areas where the adjustments still need to come through, I wouldn't anticipate it being more than that $173,000 decrease that we're currently projecting. And so what the preliminary levy will approve tonight, we'll certify it at the maximum based on the levy calculations. But again, it'll be somewhere in that no change to 0.5% or so decrease in the levy. Are there any questions on the preliminary levy?
Al, we'll start on your side. Go ahead.
I just have one comment on it. And
Al, you're muted.
there we go.
Okay.
Now I should be unmuted.
Yes.
I just have one comment on it, and that's $173,000 decrease, which is about 0.5%. But the average homeowner would see a larger decrease than that because it's that's a dollar amount decrease, and the dollar amount is spread out across all homeowners and businesses in the district, and there's been a substantial amount of growth within our district, according to the mayor this last week anyway. He said he's seen a lot of new housing starts and apartment building going up and things that pay and generate tax revenue. So the the decrease that the average homeowner would see should actually be larger than that 0.5%. So.
Yep.
Thank you, Al. Monica, do you have any comments or questions? Jen?
No.
Zach? Natalie? Thank you, Amy. I was at Finance Committee, so I have no questions. At this time, I am looking for a motion to approve the preliminary levy certification as just discussed.
I'll move. Oh, go ahead.
I'll second.
All right.
Okay, yep. I'll move. Back a second.
Shannon, could you take roll, please?
Yes. Monica Segura Shorts.
Yes.
Dahlgren.
Yes.
Shannon Hodges is yes. Natalie Ringsmith.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt.
Yes.
Jeff Polreese.
Yes.
And Les Green is not here.
Thank you, Shannon. We will move on to item number B, final levy certification announcement. There's no action needed on this. This will also be by Amy Skullerud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Yep, and this is really just in accordance with statute to publicly provide the official levy approval, which will also include a time for public comment. We'll open up that at that meeting and do that truth and taxation hearing. And so that final levy certification will take place at the regularly scheduled board meeting on December 16th, 2020, meetings at 6:30 p.m. at the St. Cloud District Administrative Office located at 1201 2nd Street South in Waite Park.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone have any discussions or questions about that? Okay. Thank you, Amy. We will move on to reports. First up is Superintendent Report. This will be done by Willie Jett, our Superintendent of District 742 Schools.
Good evening, Chair Polreese, members of the board, and for people that are live streaming out in public. First, the District 742 Local Education and Activities Foundation announces the official kickoff of the Adopt a Classroom project for the fall of 2020. LEAF's goal is to connect businesses, individuals, and groups to specific classrooms to help provide needed supplies that the district is unable to fund. Supporters can adopt a classroom, early education, elementary, junior high, or high school by making a tax-deductible $250 contribution for the needed classroom supplies. This is LEAF's 10th year of Adopt a Classroom project, which has dispersed over $179,000 to 718 classrooms in the previous 9 years. The Adopt a Classroom form can be downloaded or contributions can be given at www.leaf742.org. Again, that's www.leaf742.org. Next, the St. Cloud Police Department hosted a school supply drive to benefit St. Cloud Area School District 742 students for the upcoming school year. Donations were accepted at the St. Cloud Rotary Community Outpost. The Community Outpost team collaborates with residents, community groups, and businesses, and St. Cloud State University to assess community needs, build and maintain relationships, and improve access to needed health, wellness, and other services. Mayo Clinic Ambulance, CentraCare Health, and Stearns County Social Services have a designated space in the facility. Donations were delivered to the District Administration Office on August 31st. Next, due to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's extension of the Summer Food Service Program, beginning Monday, September 14th, St. Cloud Area School District will be able to provide free breakfast and lunch for all students, including our District Learning Academy. For hybrid students, meals will be served at school on a student's in-person days, and students will receive meals for at-home days at the end of their in-person day each week. And lastly, just want to say thank you to all. And when I say thank you to all, I mean our staff, our parents, our community partners, for the wonderful beginning to the school year, for people's patience, for people allowing each other to have grace. But I also want to, at this moment, acknowledge and say thank you to the executive team that you're looking at on the screen. Their timeless effort in being able to change on a dime, and their ability to problem solve, and they're still problem solving, and will continue to problem solve for the next day, 2 week, month, because this is a brand new moment in time in what's going on. It's just it's wonderful to have a team that's willing to work with everybody and provide customer service, not just to students, not just to staff, not just to the community, but to all involved. So I just wanted to say thank you and to acknowledge the execs on the screen. And last but not least, Board of Education, thank you for your patience, as I'm sure you were being bombarded like we are as executive team with everybody with questions. And so it's interesting because as I was driving into this meeting, I was reflecting with a few superintendents and some others who are retired. And they all were talking about the beginning of a school year and how it's always a hectic time. And then they asked us who are not retired, who are not on their golf carts, they asked us, what's it like now? And our response, or my response, was, it's the same nuttiness like the beginning of every school year, with everybody experiencing something new, but it feels as if it's magnified. I didn't say 10 times, I'm going to say 100 times. And so it's just this interesting time and place that we're in. And it's nice to be able to see, as a community, everybody coming together to work for young people. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you, Willie. Now we will move on to item B, Board of Education reports. I've been told Board Development, Policy, and Governance does not have one. Legislative Committee does not have one for tonight. Personnel Negotiations gave it last time, so none for tonight. First up would be Al Dahlgren, Chair of the Finance and Audit Committee.
Finance and Audit Committee met on September 15th, just this past Monday. The first item on our agenda was the preliminary levy, which we just had a discussion with Amy about that, so I'm not going to go through that one, but we talked about that and recommended approval and moving forward to the board and approving that. Second up was a discussion on fund transfers. Amy reviewed MDE Commissioner guidance for the transfer of funds for emergency. To cover extra expenses caused by COVID-19, school districts are allowed to transfer funds from one account to another as long as the transfer meets criteria created by Minnesota laws 2020 and is board approved. This fund transfer option is available only for fiscal years 20 and 21. The administration is recommending transferring $1.9 million of long-term facilities maintenance to the general fund, food service, and community funds. The $1.9 million balance in LTFM is due to projects scheduled for fiscal year 20 that were not able to be done due to COVID-19. If we don't transfer this money to another fund, MDE will do a negative levy adjustment the following year. The transfer will be presented to the board for approval on October 7th. So we'll get more information on that. But the bottom line on it is that we had a whole bunch of things scheduled for long-term facilities maintenance, and because of COVID, some of those projects we were unable to complete them. And in order to avoid having MDE come in and do a negative adjustment to us next year, we'll move those funds to other, as long as we can, and we're doing it legally, we will move it to other funds and do those projects at a later date. We discussed transportation contracts next on the agenda, and Gary reported that the person in the routing position in the transportation department has recently retired. Instead of filling the routing position, it was decided to use CESO Transportation for routing services at an annual cost of $65,000. This is very close to the cost of the salary and benefits of the person who is in the routing position. Included in the 2-year contract with CESO is an efficiency study, which we've been looking to have done for a number of years. CESO already does our special education transport routing, so this will give them the balance of our routing, and it'll all be handled through them. And lastly on our agenda was a CARES funding update. Amy reported there have been very few changes since the last presentation. So far, Stearns, Wright, and Sherburne counties have also offered reimbursement funds for COVID-19 related expenditures. And Amy, help me, this was Sherburne. They came with the additional since our last meeting, so Sherburne offered some reimbursement.
Yes, and actually I just got an email from Benton County today too. I've got a call. It says it's for businesses, but it was sent to the district's attention. So I suspect it may be all 4 counties now.
Okay. So updated information will be presented at the next Board Finance Committee meeting. And that was it on our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Let the record reflect that Board Member Les Green is now present at the meeting a couple minutes ago. Next up would be Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee, chaired by Natalie Ringsmith.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we met this week on the first day that my kids were going back to school. So I was getting them up and attempting to lead this meeting. We talked about a few different items, 2 of them being World's Best Workforce and Strategic Plan update. And what's basically going on there is a lot of the measurements that we had for both of those different reportings didn't happen. So things like the climate survey, and so we're thinking through, and MCAs, things of that nature. So we're thinking, I'm not thinking through it, but our wonderful execs are thinking through how are we going to measure. And so they're going to need a little bit more time in the schedule. So we talked through World's Best Workforce with Tina Lahr, who is leading that effort this year, along with Lori Posch. And we discussed how they're making the World's Best Workforce report look a little different than it used to. Instead of more of a dry or cold report, it's going to be looking like a book. And once all the data is in there, it's going to be turned over to Tammy DeLand's team to make it look like the 742 brand, so that it's something that we can put on our website and really have as this is who we are as a district and everything we're bringing to the table as 742. So we're going to move, we're wanting to move the World's Best Workforce Board discussion or presentation back, as well as the strategic plan update back for those reasons. The other thing we talked about was a continuing discussion on school presentations for the board. We talked about what we all talked about here last meeting and decided how to move forward, and we will be talking about that at the next work session to really make sure that we're getting the best that we can out of those school presentations, and yes, hearing about our schools and the wonderful things, and also what the needs are, and hearing from each board member what their needs are when it comes to that, and then having a formula that would work for all school presentations that come to the board. And that concludes my report. Our next meeting is in October.
Thank you, Natalie. Next up, we're going to deviate a little bit, and I'm going to ask Ellen Stewart just to give a quick report about what her year looks like and how it started out for her. She's new to our executive team.
Thank you, Chair Polaris. Yes, thank you for giving me the time to update you. I'm a rookie, so this is all new to me, but I tell you, I'm very excited. The equity department, we have met the challenges head on. As you can imagine, the uniqueness with it being distance learning, we're not able to use our resources in the way that we have in the past. So it demands creativity, and I'm so fortunate to have staff that thrives on being creative and maximizing resources. We also are very excited about our plans on increasing services for our multilingual families. One of them is we are exploring headsets, translating headsets that we will be providing to the schools so that especially, in those times when we have those very unique languages requests, and not having to wait a day or two to go through another organization. And in addition, we are looking at exploring a language line so that our schools, again, have immediate access for translating services, because we realize that, having language as a barrier can be very frustrating for both families, for students and parents. So with that, I am, again, very excited about the horizon for what's looking like for equity this year. And I don't know if there's any questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for Ellen? All right. Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate
Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk.
All right. Next up is item number 5, future agenda items. Coming up, we will be talking about World's Best Workforce Plan. We'll be talking about the Minnesota Department of Human Rights update. We also will have a discussion on enrollment report. And we will have a very big discussion on school presentations, purpose, and goals. All right, at this time, I do want to thank my fellow board member, Mona Sakura Schwartz, for these fantastic earbuds. My ears love you. The time is 7:17. We are going to end our school board for tonight, so it's adjourned. And on behalf of the entire school board, I'd like to welcome back all our students and staff. Have a great night and be safe.